Welcome to Diasporaa, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta, and each week we sit down with individuals who have made the journey over and explore their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs. We delve into their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while staying connected to their roots. Today, we are joined by Aditi Shah. She's the founder of Mindful Mela, a New York City-based event strategy and planning company. Originally from Bombay, she moved to the US with her family when she was 18, and she spent some time in Indiana before moving to NYC, where she has been ever since, and now lives in Manhattan with her husband and daughter. I know Aditi from elementary school, incidentally. We were in the same school from grades 5 to 10, and I don't think we ever spoke. So, like I was saying before the show, there's 30 years of things worth to talk about today. So let's dive into this week's conversation. Aditi, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aditya, for having me. Indeed, there is much to catch up on.
Yeah. So, first question, is it Bombay or is it Mumbai?
So I always say Bombay when I speak to people from Bombay because that's what the city was called when I was growing up. It's closely tied to my identity.
Yeah.
And the name obviously holds a special place, almost sacred meaning for me.
Yeah, I heard somewhere, I think it was written on the wall at like Cafe Mondegar in Kolaba, that Mumbai is a place and Bombay is an emotion.
That's true.
So, yeah, I think when I speak Marathi, I do say Mumbai, but otherwise I also say Bombay.
Yeah, and also, when you're speaking to non-Indians, I
Yeah.
do say Mumbai because that is the legal name.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like you said,
The league. My guests, I think, know by now that India went through this renaming spree in the 90s where all the cities' names were changed to more localized or like local language names. I want to also touch upon your last name, Shah. I think in our classroom of 40 something students, more than 20 were Shahs. So you're probably the first one with that last name to come to our show. So tell our listeners more about the Shah last name and what it means.
yeah, that's exciting. So my understanding is that generally speaking, Gujaratis that do business, they change their last name to Shah because my actual family name is Kadakia, which I never used, but it was my granddad. He changed it to Shah. But my understanding is also that Shah means king in Iran, right?
Yeah.
King of Persia, the Shah of Iran.
Yeah.
But Shah in this context, I think, has relevance to Shahukar, which means
Okay.
a trader or a businessman. So
Yeah.
I think there is a relationship,
Sure.
but I think it's mostly the latter, right? The
Yeah,
business
in
aspect.
Marathi, you have Saukar as a last name
Yes.
quite often as well. Wow, I learned
Right.
something new today.
Yeah.
So usually I ask my guests that if your city was an American city, what it would be. But we've had several guests from Bombay. So I'll ask you a twist to that question. Usually people say Bombay is like New York. New York and LA combined, probably.
Yeah.
So what does Bombay have that New York doesn't? And what does New York have that Bombay doesn't?
Interesting. So I feel like you said, New York and Bombay definitely feel like cousins. I've been to LA, San Francisco, and Chicago, but I truly feel that Bombay, like New York, truly mirrors Bombay in its chaos, open-mindedness.
Yeah.
But I would say Bombay hits you in sounds, colors, smells.
Yeah.
Everything kind of overlaps. And there is more of a sense of shared space.
Yeah.
And people look out for each other in
Yeah.
small but unspoken ways.
Yeah.
Whereas New York, I feel, is intense. It's
Yeah.
a bit sharper, more vertical. It's a city of ambition. Everyone's hustling, right, for something. And you're kind of alone together. And people do leave you alone, right, for better or
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
And I do feel that there is, because I grew up in Bombay, have so many connections there, New York gives you that anonymity, which is good and bad in its own way.
That's a great way to put it. And I love this term alone together. And because I never felt that in Bombay, but I can see why one would feel that in New York. Great. So we were in a school called New Era together. I believe you spent your entire school in New Era. And unlike the US, you don't have a separate elementary school and a middle school and a high school. So there's primary and secondary, and New Era obviously had both. And then after 10th grade, you go to junior college. So were you in New Era from like kindergarten all
From
the way
the
up to?
start, K
Okay.
through 10.
Okay, K through 10. And then
Yes.
what did you do for your 11th and 12th grades?
I was in Jayanth for
Okay.
11th and 12th.
Okay, we had a guest named Karishma Wadwani from Jai Hind.
Okay.
And she's Sindhi. So she
Okay.
told us all about the history of the Sindhi educational institutions. But
Okay.
then end of the day, we both settled that HR had the better canteen and better food, and how Jain people used to come to HR to
Definitely. The Chinese at HR.
Raju Chinese.
Exactly. My best friend Riddhi from our school, she
Yeah.
was at HR and,
Oh yeah, she was in HR.
yeah.
Yeah, I think very few people from our school came to HR. I think maybe Sahil Parekh was there and Riddhi
Right.
was there and maybe one or two more people. So tell us a little bit more about New Era, the school, and what its legacy is, because I don't think most people, even in Bombay, know about the school and its history.
Yeah, it is interesting. And this is kind of like a hindsight vision, right? When you're in school, you don't realize these things.
Yeah.
So the school was set up in 1927 when India was still under British rule, right?
Yeah.
So the founders were driven by this sense of national pride
Yeah.
and wanted to create a co-educational, child-centric school, something radical for the time. And they were inspired by Gandhian secular nationalism, Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel laureate's holistic philosophy that he used to set up Shantiniketan, and
Yeah.
Maria Montessori's progressive education model. This mix, I believe, gave the school grounding, right?
Yeah.
Intellectually open, culturally rooted, and quietly rebellious in the best way possible, right?
Yeah.
And of course, like over the years, school changed, the crowd changed, but the reality is that it was popular at the time to go
Yeah.
to a convent school. But my parents felt that it was important for the kids to learn the mother tongue, and its rich legacy and history was important, right? And even in modern day, if you think about it, its inclusivity was unique. Do you remember on Fridays we had Sarva Dharma Prarthana?
Yes.
That was like
All-
prayer for
all
all
religion
religions.
prayer.
Right? We had Islamic prayer, we had Catholic prayer, we
Yeah.
had Zoroastrian because our principal was
Oh, yeah.
Parsi.
Yes.
So I thought that was pretty cool, even though we were in a homogenous environment, right?
Yeah.
With like similar demographics, South Bombay.
Yeah.
But I thought that was unique.
You're quite a wordsmith, Aditi, because quietly rebellious. Like I never thought of New Era as that, and it's actually making me very nostalgic about school.
Yeah.
And making me miss school. It's a time of your life, and people always say, "Oh, school days were the best days." And I was like, "No, I had way more fun in college." But like
Agreed.
now, just listening to you, it was a special place for sure.
Yeah.
And just for more context for our listeners, our school is very close to Mani Bhavan, where Gandhi ji used to live. And it's also very close to August Kranti Maidan, which is where the 1942 Quit India movement was launched. And there's like a memorial there and all of that. It's a very historic part of the city, along with the Tejpal Auditorium next door, where the Indian National Congress was launched. It's thick with like Indian freedom movement. And most people probably don't get that. And my parents put me there for the same reason as yours did, is to get exposure to Gujarati culture.
Yeah.
I really struggled with Gujarati as a subject. Like it was, we were learning 4 languages at a time. Like
Yeah, that's true.
It's a lot. So the minute I got to drop it in 8th grade and take Hindi French, I dropped it and took Hindi French.
I remember you taking French, definitely.
Yeah, there were some kids there who really were in that school because their English was not strong.
Yeah.
And then there were kids like you and me who were there because their parents wanted exposure to Gujarati culture.
Right.
So, you remember the chutney sandwiches?
In the school canteen, or was
Yeah.
it outside? I actually only remember, oh my God, yes, I do remember chutney sandwiches that were also sold at Tejpal because it was the same caterer.
Exactly. They were famous. They were 2 rupees for half a sandwich. And my pocket money used to be 10 rupees a week.
Yeah.
So that would basically pay for 5 sandwiches. And my brother, who's 7 years younger, but 8 years behind in the batch because I was 1 year ahead,
Yeah.
he would come to our classroom and ask for, 2 rupees for the chutney sandwich. And I would be like, dude, I only have enough for myself.
Right.
And he's now a stand-up comedian professionally.
Amazing.
But his creative side was visible even then, because then he would appeal to the class and say in Gujarati, "A juo bada potana bhai ne nathi apto be rupiya." Like he would, so for our guest, he would appeal to the class that, look at this guy, he's not giving 2 rupees to his younger brother for a sandwich.
Yeah.
And he's muscled out a lot of money
Yeah.
from me for sandwiches. So
Yeah.
I
I don't
think-
blame him.
yeah, just talking to you is unlocking a lot of those memories. So
Yes.
I appreciate this conversation. After school and after Jai Hind, you moved to the US, but with your whole family, right?
Yeah.
So what drove that move to the US as a whole family?
Yeah. So, the family immigration took place in 2004. But my uncle had applied, my mom's brother had applied for our visa 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So, just to give you some context here, except for one uncle, my entire extended family on both sides had already migrated to the US. Starting in the late 1950s, my dad's
Oh, wow.
oldest brother came on a ship and
Wow.
was one of the first few people from the community. So that wave of immigration continued through the 1980s because my mom has six brothers and a sister. They all live here. So then there was a pause for a while, and until our turn came in 2004, right? So we came with a green card. My brother had already arrived. I have an older brother who also went to New Era. He had already arrived on a student visa.
How many years older is he?
He technically is 4.5 years older,
Okay.
but he was academically 4 years ahead.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you know him or not, but he did top the school in 10th grade.
Okay.
So
his name would be on that brown board outside the.
yeah, his name, I mean, at this point, no, but so many more batches graduated.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was the infamous sister.
Okay. Got it. Interesting. Yeah. So then your whole family, are they spread out across the US, or are they concentrated in one place?
So I'd say that most of them are in the Midwest, and
Okay.
hence why we were in Indiana,
Yeah.
Michigan, Ohio,
Okay.
Indiana, Illinois.
Yeah.
And of course, their kids now are spread out, but I would say
Sure.
pretty much in that area.
Yeah, you don't see that type of immigration these days anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
the family sponsoring the green card, then
Yeah.
waiting for several years, then the turn comes up and then they move here. They probably do, like, they join one of the family businesses to start with.
Right.
And then the kids go off and do their own thing. So that has, I think, trickled to like next to zero these days because of
Yeah.
how long the green card wait has become.
It-
I didn't even bother applying for a green card. We lived in Canada before this, so we're Canadian citizens.
Right.
So we are here on one of the investor visas that is available for Canadian citizens.
Right.
But the wait for the green card in my category for someone born from India is 90 years. And
Oh my
that's
God.
90. Yeah. So we are like, either we need to become somebody famous and go through the O1 visa route, or
Right.
we need to pony up $1 million and then go through the EB5 route. But I have a lot of family friends similar to your situation where over like decades, one after the other, all the siblings came and now they have
Yeah.
the kind of family that I have in Bombay, like 8 grandparents, families all in Bombay between my
Right.
wife and me. Now, like they have that here, and that's quite an amazing thing to have so much family here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you went to school in Purdue. I also did my undergrad. I went to UT Austin. So as a rival, I should not be inviting you to my podcast to begin with.
But I'm hardly a rival because I am not into college football. So
I
don't know
am-
much about it.
I am so much into college football. It's ridiculous. I have a Texas Longhorn tattoo. That's how
Oh,
much
wow.
into college football I am. Yeah. What did you study there? And how was that experience right after Jai Hind? Like, because you were new in the country.
Yeah.
And, it was a college experience. And it was, I guess, in some ways different than mine because I came here as a student while my family was still in India.
Yes.
So how were those early days, and were there any kind of culture shocks coming from India but coming from Bombay and not
Yeah.
like a small town of India? How was that experience?
Yeah. So we landed in Indianapolis, right? That's where both my father's and mother's brother lived and their families. And we basically lived with one of my uncles for a significant amount of time,
Sure.
which was kind of helpful, right? Because
Yeah.
to assimilate, and also my dad was already 50 years old when we moved to the US.
Wow.
So at that age, adapting to a new place, things are changing,
Of
right?
course.
As opposed to someone who's 18 years old. They both drove in India, had
Yeah.
college degrees,
Yeah.
and spoke a decent amount of English, but still starting fresh, learning
Yeah.
how to drive
Yeah.
was a challenge,
I mean,
and I had to
see-
kind of,
Just to pause you there, I
Yeah,
see a
sure.
difference between people who come for undergrad and masters.
yes.
Just that 4 years also makes such a big difference. So at 50, that's quite commendable that he made that move at that age and then adapted to life here. So I can only imagine how difficult it would be.
Yeah, it was definitely difficult. And at some point, as an 18-year-old, you had to parent your parents, right? For the little time that I was there with them. And then when I went to Purdue, that dynamic changed. But funny that you ask about culture shock, right? That was a question that I was constantly asked by the Indians in the diaspora or non-Indians. Oh, how does it feel to
Yeah.
be in America? Is it very different? So I felt like, the culture shock wasn't because I was from India and we understood American culture. And it wasn't because I didn't understand American values. We did have access to
We watched Friends on
and
TV.
Backstreet Boys, right? And access to internet. Maybe a
Yeah.
season behind, but still pretty
Yeah.
connected. We spoke English. We were aware of global trends. But I feel like the culture shock was because I was from urban India, right? The vastness of suburbia, the chain stores, and just how
Right.
spread out everything is. And
Yeah.
think about a girl coming from Mumbai and where everything constantly is pulsing, and then suddenly you're somewhere where you can hear your own footsteps echo, right?
Yeah.
So I would say that definitely was adjusting to that version of America.
Yeah.
But it was surprising how everybody just assumed, you
Yeah.
know, that there must be, and it's true for some Indians, right?
Yeah. Did you find that the Indians who had been there for a long time had a very different version of India than what you came from?
Yeah, I definitely thought that way. You know, they held on to this version of India that didn't really match up to the one where I came from. You know, I thought
Yeah.
I came from energy, that Bombay that was changing. It was modern and we did
Yeah.
have a global perspective. And it probably for them, it paused. Like when
Yeah.
they left India in the 70s, 60s, 80s, whenever. It's also an instrument of how often you travel and how often you're
Of course.
connected to the young generation.
Yeah. Back
And
then,
also,
people didn't come every year, right?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And the non-Indians also are shown this version on Fox News or CNN.
The snake charmer version.
Yeah, you know, and urban India is vastly different.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you try to fight that, but then
Yeah.
you give up. You're like, who are you trying to prove?
Yeah. On that note, let's take a short break. And when we return, we will continue talking about what you did right after college and your interesting work in the social impact space. So stay tuned for these messages.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diasporaa, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diasporaa offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests on the Diasporaa Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
Working hard to put a smile on your face. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Diaspora on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. We are talking to Aditi Shah. She's a New York City-based entrepreneur in the social impact space. But before we get back to talking to Aditi, I want to take a moment to remind you to subscribe to our channel on YouTube. You can find all our podcasts and episodes in video form there, right from the very first one. So, Aditi, what did you do after Purdue? What was your first job experience like?
Yeah. Wow. So after Purdue, you know, studying psychology and political science, you don't have a job that's waiting for you. It's a struggle, you know, and most of my friends were engineers and they had a sense of what they were going to do.
I have marketing and urban planning, so I had the same problem. No one's lining up their H-1 visas for you.
Yes. Yeah. And also being, you know, a non-linear thinker, it always followed my heart. So I said, let's move to New York City and we'll figure out from there. Job in sales was my first ever job in New York City. And it wasn't easy, for sure. But
what were you selling?
So you know how they have those large machines, production style printing machines that fashion houses, big law firms, they use? And we were trying to sell that. I thought I was okay, but I hated the job. Literally, it built so much confidence, like knocking on doors, going through those doorman buildings. I was petrified because they're like wondering where you're headed to, because these are all like meetings that are cold, right?
Yeah.
So I'd say that was challenging, but I did learn a lot, right? From that. But then I was also doing certificate in global affairs at NYU, which kind of opened up doors for me, right? Like it really deepened my interest in global, more international mission driven work. And that path led to refugee resettlement work with like charities. And that experience really cemented that interest in social impact. And that journey took me to China with World Teach, teaching English in China to high schoolers. So that was a 1-year program. It was fabulous. And then after that, I moved to Bombay for 2 years to join my then boyfriend. And then we got married in that time period. I worked at a nonprofit, like an education-based nonprofit, for about 2 years. Again, very interesting because I had grown up in Bombay, but I had never really worked. So was able to attend some of my friends' weddings on my side and also on my husband's side. So that was pretty cool. And then we came back to New York. And that's where for several years I worked in national and international nonprofits across different sectors, right? Like environment, culture, global affairs, and immigration. Before I started my own company.
Let's unpack some of those experiences. So I'm a big fan of doing sales early in your career. Because it teaches you dealing with failure, it teaches you resilience, it teaches you tenacity, taking no for an answer. And it's not for everyone. I love sales. I've been in sales most of my career. But did you find that it taught you those things even though you didn't enjoy it per se?
Yeah, definitely. The resilience for sure, right? Still knocking on those doors, picking up the phone and talking to strangers, writing those cold emails. I do think that I learned so much from working in sales at the time because in my nonprofit journey, I worked in the development sector, right? Like I was doing fundraising through institutions, corporates, and individuals. And it is all about relationship and how you approach them, how you write an email to them, how you present yourself. So I definitely think that I learned a lot of those soft skills in that sales job.
Tell us more about the World Teach program. What does it do and how did you come across it and how was your experience with that?
So World Teach shut down because of funding issues, I think a couple of years ago, pretty sad. It was part of the Harvard University's International Development Office. They were based in Massachusetts and they sent volunteers abroad, South America, Africa, Asia, and South Asia to teach English. And in some instances, it wasn't just English, it was also mentoring young college students. But the China program specifically was to teach English to high schoolers. I think there was a program by the Chinese government. They were putting a lot of money in training the kids in learning English from the Westerners, right? So that was the program that I went to. And I was in a town called Zhuzhou in Hunan province. No one spoke any English, but they had bullet trains and Western grocery stores. So I learned how to speak Mandarin. I think that's when I sometimes feel that learning those 4 languages at the same time really opened up those neural pathways to learn more foreign languages. So I'd say that was interesting, was also able to travel through the country. And travel really truly opens up your mind. It really basically helps you eliminate all the biases and stereotypes you have for people. And you see the beauty that the whole earth is beautiful, no matter where you're going.
Travel stretches your mind open in a way that it can never be unstretched again. So do you still speak Mandarin? Are you in touch with the language?
So it's a very difficult language, right? They don't have alphabets, right? They have images for those letters. It's a difficult language. I did take some lessons while I was there. I was able to get by, like shopping, taking a taxi, buying a train ticket. After I came back to New York, I did work at China Institute. So they were offering Mandarin classes to employees. It just got difficult. And I didn't have an avenue to practice that language. So I don't really speak it. But here and there, if I meet somebody who's from China, I'll say, ni hao, or like, thank you, or something like that. My Spanish is better than my Mandarin. So,
my Spanish is better than my Mandarin as well. That's very interesting. So how long did you spend in China?
It was about a year.
Okay.
Exactly a year.
In a lot of our families in India, especially like Bombay, Gujarati families, there's always like a worry associated with their daughter living in a strange foreign country for a year alone.
Yeah.
So, how did your family take it, and were they supportive? Was it easy to convince them?
Yeah. So I'd say in general, my parents have always been supportive in
Yeah.
things I have decided to do. And China wasn't the first time I was leaving home, right? I'd left home to go to Purdue. I'd left home to go to New York City. And then it was a gradual next step to go to China. So it wasn't even a conversation why.
Okay.
Okay, what's the plan?
Yeah.
Where are you going to be living? And what are the next steps? I think they've always been encouraging because the steps that I took were organic.
Yeah.
Nothing was, it didn't come
Crazy.
as a surprise, you
Yeah.
know. So I'd say mostly supportive.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned that you spent a couple of years in Bombay. Tell us more about what work you did when you were in Bombay.
Yeah. So I worked at Muktangan. It is a nonprofit that runs schools in partnership with GMC schools, right? The sorry, not GMC, BMC schools.
BMC.
So those schools basically Muktangan had adopted them. Kind of like you're familiar with the concept of charter schools
Yeah.
in the US. So kind of like that, right? They receive the funding, they add their own funding, they train their own teachers, but it's still a public school that is run on the premises, right? So I did mostly training those teachers English and also a lot of resource mobilization, which is
Okay.
fundraising through corporates, foundations, and
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah. Bombay as a child is very different from Bombay as a working professional.
Yeah.
And I loved the former and I hated the latter
Ah,
because I commuted 3.5 hours a day from South Bombay to
wow.
Sakinaka. And my wife always jokes that I moved to North America to escape Bombay traffic. But how was your experience with Bombay growing up as a child versus a working professional in your second stint?
Yeah. I think as a child, very sheltered, right? You grow up in one area, the school is so close by. We didn't have many relatives to begin with, right,
Right.
in India because most of my parents' siblings were abroad. But even the ones that were in Mumbai were scattered around like vicinity of our neighborhood, right? I hadn't actually left beyond Voli on my own,
Yeah.
right? Up
That's
until I was
that's
in
where
Jai.
South Bombay ends and rest
Yeah.
of India starts. So
So I would say sheltered for sure.
yeah.
And then coming back to Bombay in my 20s, right, was a little different because I lived with my husband's family. My parents were still in Indianapolis then. Now
Sure.
they've retired and moved back to Bombay. So I
Okay.
lived with them and it was quite comfortable. You know, the commute wasn't terrible. They were in Shivaji Park and the office was in Worli area. You know, so it was like about 20 minutes, but still you would get stuck. It
So
was frustrating at times.
so on that note, ask anyone from other parts of India how far is something, they'll say kilometers.
Yes.
And in Bombay, they'll say 20 minutes. Like, I had gone to Goa once and I asked
Yeah.
somebody, like, oh, how far is the hotel from the airport? And he's like, oh, 11 kilometers. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Like, how many minutes? Like, is it 30 minutes? Is it 20 minutes? He's like, oh, I don't know how many minutes. It's 11 kilometers. And I just couldn't understand what that meant.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah. Would you ever move back to India permanently?
I mean, it's unlikely in the near future, right?
Yeah.
Because no place is perfect,
Yeah.
but you're always, you know, your pros always have to outweigh the cons. And right
Yeah.
now they do
Yeah.
with a significant margin.
Yeah.
I do say that I'd say never.
Yeah.
It could be a hybrid kind of
Yeah.
a living when my daughter goes off to college.
Yeah.
But for the time being, the New York energy resonates with us. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to stay put.
So my wife and I talk about this quite a lot because I came here at a similar age as you did. So I
Yeah.
picked up a lot of American habits. Then I was forced to go back because I didn't have a visa out of college. So I spent 10 years in India kind of missing this part of the world.
Yeah.
Because in India we have standard of living as, you know, South Bombay, well-to-do families.
Yeah.
We don't have quality of life. Nobody does. And that is what I was missing. And, you know, and that's what I moved here for. My wife had always lived in India.
Yeah.
So she didn't know what she didn't know, right, about life here. And I pretty much dragged her here with me to this part of the world when she was very happy there. She would move back in a heartbeat.
Wow.
But for me, it's like I will not get this quality of life, especially with the child, the simple things that you can do as an ordinary citizen, you can't do there even no matter how rich you are.
Right.
Just going to a park at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, right?
Yes.
So for me, those things have been an issue. I own a property management company here, and
Yeah.
a lot of homes I manage are owned by people who have young children and
Yeah.
are moving back to India. As salaries go up and they have all the household help that they need. So their priorities are very different. They moved here for their masters, so they're not as Americanized. One of my previous guests, Priyanka, said something hilarious that, for a lot of people, assimilation is a Costco membership. And those people, they go back and they are very happy going back because they're still, for lack of a better term, much more Indian.
Yeah.
In, not just their accent or whatever, but in their thought process and
Sure.
how they feel part of this country.
Yeah.
And what we've been debating is to move to some place like Dubai, which is best of both. It's
Yeah.
close enough from India that your parents can visit you regularly and you can go home regularly, but
Yeah.
it's still near American way of life.
Right.
Quality of life, probably not there. And I think we who live in this Pacific Northwest
Yes.
like British Columbia, we're spoiled in how much beauty there is around us.
For sure.
But yeah, Dubai is probably like a happy middle place to have a base to
Yeah.
operate when it's raining 5 months of the year here.
Yeah, that is true. But also to your point, right? Like when we lived in Bombay for those 2 years,
Yeah.
it definitely felt like the time that you spend socializing and the commitments that you have,
Yeah.
you're not really getting time for yourself to
Of
really
course.
pause, reflect on
Yeah.
what you did, why you're doing it, and where you're headed. So I think that was something that was definitely missing.
Yeah. Yeah. Since all our 8 grandparents have family in Bombay, I
Yeah.
think we could probably fill a small stadium with a family gathering, right? So the amount of time you spend maintaining relationships and doing things because you're supposed to do them out of the social necessity
Right?
it's a big drain on your time. And
Yeah.
then you bring in things like commuting, then you bring in things like the effort result correlation being poor, and as a business person,
Yeah.
your time is your money, and the amount of time you spend in Bombay or in India in general with
Right.
like non-productive things, that really changed the equation for me. And I always told my wife, I'm going to be a better business person in this part of the world. Kind of being validated because I've had businesses in India and Canada and here.
Right.
And I'm way more successful here based on my temperament
Wow.
than I was in India. So
But given the infrastructure and the ecosystem that you have back home, even then,
even then, because I think my family and we are too straight for India. We are too straight edge. You need to have a certain thick skin to do business in India.
right?
And it's not like my family business has not done well.
Yeah.
But if they were willing to bend the rules like a lot of people do, they would have been 10x more successful. So it's a different set of challenges. And
For sure.
there's challenges here as well. But I mean, from my MBA days, I've been very self-aware as to what I'm good at and what I'm not. And I feel my temperament is suited to just living in this part of the world, doing business in this part of the world. I take my son to baseball games and cricket games, and we do barbecues, and we're on the water. And so we really maximize the life here. And on that note, I feel like a lot of people who live here from our part of the world,
Yeah.
even though they make a ton of money, they don't maximize the life here. And
That's
it's not
right.
the US's loss, because US is getting their brains and their talents. It's their loss that they're not assimilating and taking advantage of all the wonderful things this part of the world also has to offer.
Right.
So-
For sure.
On that note, let's take a short break. And when we come back, we'll talk about Aditi's pivot to entrepreneurship and what her current business does. Stay tuned for these messages.
I'm Chris Jakomick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakomick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdman. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Get inspired every hour right here on Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to Diasporaa on KKNW, where we share interesting stories of first-generation immigrants from South Asia. We're talking to Aditi Shah, an entrepreneur in the social impact space based in Manhattan. Before we jump back into the conversation, if you like listening to our show, please consider following us on Instagram or leaving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to your podcasts. So Aditi, tell me a little bit more about the work you did in refugee resettlement.
Yeah. So in refugee resettlement, these were refugees that arrived in New York, whether they were from Western African nations or from Tibet or from South America. So the goal for the Refugee Resettlement Office was to resettle them in New York, provide them English coaching, interview skills, and get them ready to get their next job. So I was teaching them English and also working with them on their job readiness skills. So that's what the Refugee Resettlement Office that I was part of. Like, I wasn't part of the team that actually received the refugees from the airport and actually resettled them in terms of housing.
Were these typically people escaping difficult situations in their home countries?
For the most part, they were asylees and refugees that were fighting persecution and wanted a new home for their families where they were safe.
And were they generally well-educated people, or did they represent all strata of society from blue collar to...
I would say it was a mixed bag, and probably more so on the blue collar end, right? Because not many of them had college degrees, but a fair amount of refugees also were PhDs and were doctors in their home countries. I would say it was a mixed bag.
Yeah. What got you interested in social impact in the first place?
Yeah, like I mentioned, being a non-linear thinker, I always felt like I was driven by purpose and meaning. And I was always seeking that. I just didn't have the words to articulate that. And that comes with experience by doing different jobs. And when I was in sales, I was like, something's missing. Missing. I need to find my purpose. Then I started taking classes at NYU. And that's when I started studying global affairs and taking classes in international development. I felt like I wanted to do something that was meaningful, that was international in nature. And I was able to sort of contribute towards a cause. And that led me to social impact organizations. And refugee resettlement was just like a quick introduction into that field. And then I had to do multiple jobs to realize that what is it that I really want?
Yeah, that's great. I've always been a strong believer in impact in general, but I also felt that there's more than one way to do it. Right?
For sure.
Like, being in a non-profit is one way. Being in politics is a way of having social impact. So when I was with my family business, I had a strong sense of purpose that we are helping people invest and build their financial future.
Yes.
I really struggled with that at Amazon. Because in the start, I was definitely having social impact in the sense I was helping launch new warehouses, which were creating hundreds of jobs in those cities where those jobs were very welcome. But then when my org became sort of redundant, we were all moved into other teams, and my job was to basically stare at one yellow label on the Amazon package and find ways to optimize the label. And because of the scale of Amazon, if I save 1 minute per day per shift for one driver, that's nationally millions of dollars in savings. So it made sense for Amazon, but I was really struggling with my sense of purpose. And now in this property management business, I think I've found it again because I'm helping people find homes, treating people with respect, giving them a good living experience. So,
and to your point, actually, Aditya, having worked in the nonprofit sector, I definitely realized that's not the only way to show impact, right? Like, that doesn't make you special if you're in the nonprofit sector. I think when you're not just looking at profit, you're also looking at people and the planet. I think when all three align is when the purpose comes, right? So definitely you could be doing many different things and still contributing.
There's a Japanese term called ikigai.
Yes, I've read the book.
So I think I'm definitely in a space. And this goes back to the point of the leakage of your time in India, where you spend a lot of time doing things that you don't want to do. It's just because it's social norms. What I love about my life here, is that it's a life of my choosing, and it's a deliberate choice where I live, what I drive, who I spend my time with, who my friends are, what social relationships I choose to maintain. And that is very helpful towards fueling the ikigai as well.
For
Is
sure.
because everything is a deliberate action versus like, oh, we do this because we just have to do this.
Right.
So what made you want to pivot to entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Again, a journey, right? To your earlier point about finding purpose, it just doesn't come. You have to fail many times before you figure that out. And I still haven't, but we're on that journey now. But I'd say that having worked with various mission-driven organizations, right? Like immigration, environment, culture, all of that were close to my heart, but I never really felt that I just wanted to be tied to one of those causes.
Yeah.
And I didn't really feel that pull that, okay, I only need to be in immigration or I only need to be in environmental causes. So deep down, I just wanted to work with all of them as a partner, not just as an employee. So I'd say that realization sort of planted that seed. And at the same time, I had become a mother and I'd seen how motherhood can truly make you humble because you're constantly failing and that illusion that you are in control. You're wrong about that, right? So in a way, I wasn't afraid anymore. And I'd already been through that big transformation. I thought that why not give this a try? I was ready. It wasn't like a leap of faith, right? It felt more like the right step. It was organic. And I felt settled emotionally, mentally to take that kind of a risk. And honestly, I was craving that flexibility to do something on my own, to have that autonomy. I guess like the 9 to 5, you're basically running someone else's show, right? But your failures and successes are all yours.
Yeah.
And of course, the quality of work matters even more because you're completely in charge of it, right? And also, I just, like to your earlier point, I didn't want to choose between work that mattered and life that felt whole. So I think I needed a balance of both. So that really pushed me to launch something 3 years ago. We're still brand new, I would say.
Yeah. The control over time is addictive. I miss that money automatically coming to your bank account on the last day of the month. But and running a business is hard. Everything is your problem as the owner. So in property management, when I was an owner operator doing everything myself, every time I would be like 10 p.m. on a Saturday dealing with somebody's leaking pipe, I would remind myself that I can also take my son to a baseball game on a Wednesday afternoon at 1 p.m. And that more than makes up for that. So tell us more about Mindful Mela and what the company does.
Yeah. So, based on the experiences that I had with the nonprofit sector, I did fundraising, right, through different channels, and events were pretty important part of my job, right? Like programmatic events or board events or galas. In New York, galas are huge. They can raise up to $1 million. And it's like a whole 6 to 8 month worth of time commitment, right? So it's a huge deal. And I had felt that working in that space, we had hired event consultants, planners, but there was a gap.
Yeah.
There weren't people that were doing strategy and planning.
Sure.
And, where the purpose, community, and storytelling converged, that was something that I was motivated by. So that sort of led me to Mindful Mela, like a purpose-driven event strategy company, like helping mission-driven organizations designing their gatherings, inspiring action, and mobilizing funds, right, ultimately. And now in year 3, I feel we're slightly pivoting, not going away from event strategy, but also introducing the fundraising angle, because that's where my experience truly lies in. So kind of having that component of event strategy, which is like your experiences, then there is fundraising, and then the communication, storytelling part.
Yeah, I got slightly exposed to this world when I was on the advisory board of mental health charity in Canada. They were the biggest mental health charity in Canada called Anxiety Canada. And I was advising them on all things tech, social media. But this goes to show that every business doesn't have to be like some tech disruptive, like billion-dollar idea. Sometimes you just address a niche. My third startup was a social media company focused on helping startups scale. So like there's lots of social media companies, but nobody was addressing the specific needs of startups. And I think you're doing something similar for that nonprofit where it sounds like you're almost like a marketing agency, but not just an event agency, but because you're doing strategy and you're doing storytelling, and that's a pretty unique setup. So
and to your point, Aditya, earlier, not everybody has to reinvent something or invent something new, right? I was reading somewhere that now MBA graduates are not looking to take on corporate jobs and a fat salary, but they're trying to go to old businesses that are like 50 years old, plumbing, electricity.
Boring
and they want to
businesses.
they want to take them on. And it's smart.
Yeah,
Why
just
not?
yesterday I was talking to a couple of friends who own a plumbing and a water damage restoration company.
Wow.
And these are boring but solid businesses. You could go to any town in America and set up a plumbing company. You're not a venture capital research company that has to be in New York or like San Francisco.
Exactly.
And there are baby boomers retiring who have run these companies for, like you said, 40, 50 years. And it's going to be the biggest wealth transfer ever between generations. People retiring and selling all these very, they do something well enough and they bring home $1 million a year and that's it. It's unsexy, but it just works. So your daughter is almost 6 years old and so she was about 3 when you started this business.
That's right.
How was it like balancing parenting and entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So, entrepreneurship definitely gives you that flexibility, right? To be able to do what you want to do, but also be present for the time when they're home. When I was in a job, it was more challenging.
Okay.
Things started to get better when I actually started Mindful Mela. I was more present at home. I didn't have the worry that, there is this deliverable. Yes, there are deliverables, but you are in charge of when they're due. Right, in the beginning years. So I'd say that it worked well. It worked well, and it was a conscious decision to change that lifestyle because my husband does have a very demanding job, and you can't have both the parents constantly being busy.
Yeah. My wife and I, we would always have one of us in a corporate job and one in entrepreneurship. But after I quit Amazon 2 years ago, now we both have our businesses. But we were very deliberate in the sense that mine has a lot of time-sensitive problem solving, but her business should not have that. Any business attribute that was negative in one's business, we made sure the other person's business offsets it.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. So, and then there were some things which we offset, which were not necessarily good or bad. Like I have lots of small clients who give me one property to manage, but she has a few large clients. So we made sure the businesses even offset that. Mine is hyper local, hers is global. Mine needs to be here, hers can be run from anywhere. And that allows us to balance each other and support each other's businesses. One thing that we did, which really works for anyone who does a business or any couple that has a business person, we would do a weekly review meeting. It started out heavy because there was lots of things to discuss, but we talk about each other's business and we talk about what's going on in our respective business, what support we need from each other, discuss key metrics so the other person knows what's going on. And then it ends with like house administration, like did you buy the gift for that birthday party or whatever. But it's been really useful in getting a structured time together to discuss, because then every time you talk, then you outside of this you can talk about life, because you don't have all these things to talk.
For sure, that's a great idea.
Yeah, anyone who does a business, I invite them to do this with their partner. It really helps with expectations and support. Simple things, right? Like, I have travel coming up, so make sure you're around for the child when I have travel. So there was one time when I think we booked travel at the same time, and then
oh wow,
and then this is before we used to have the meeting. So yeah, this avoids those kinds of things. How has parenting been in this part of the world? Because you're a first generation immigrant, so you bring with you a lot of your home culture, and the child is growing up here. I'm guessing she was born in the US.
Yes.
How has that experience been, and balancing both these cultures for you?
Interesting. Deep question. So yes, my daughter Tara was born in New York City. My parents were still in the US at the time. She was 2 years old when they moved back. So I did have the initial support from my parents and my family, but it definitely is hard. Like having both the grandparents not in the same city, not in the same country, and you have all of the responsibility of raising your kid. And also you sometimes think about the cultural values and things of that nature. But honestly, my hope isn't to overexpose her to Indian culture in a way that feels forced or, how do I say, like one-dimensional, right?
Yeah.
I do feel that I want her to have access to all of different cultures,
Yeah.
right? Like what we have here in New York, we do have that. And yes, emphasis on some traditions
Yeah.
that are Indian and the ones that we build on our own, but
Yeah.
through the lens of not from obligation,
Yeah.
right? So we
Yeah.
do like expose her by traveling to India,
Yeah.
which is meaningful, right? So she can form her own understanding what it means to be part of the diaspora when she grows up,
Yeah.
and not based on our nostalgia or my own bias or someone else's. So I'd say that my role for her is to give her a context,
Yeah.
language, history, but then at her own pace and in her own space,
Yeah.
right? So there is that challenge, right? Like my husband and I, we both speak different languages. My husband predominantly spoke English at home,
Yeah.
but he's Maharashtrian, so he speaks Marathi. I speak Gujarati. So we're not able to have that common language. And most of the times it's English.
Okay.
But I am now trying to like push
Yeah.
a little bit more for Gujarati because I do think that it's
Yeah.
important to have that cultural context.
Yeah.
Because, you know, language does amazing things to your brain.
No, that's very well said. We very consciously spoke to our son only in Gujarati for the first 2 years.
Amazing.
He thought I don't speak English. And grandparents obviously spoke Gujarati to the point where he had a Kathiawadi accent because my father-in-law has one. And he would say English words in Kathiawadi accent like toy instead of toy.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was quite a sight to see. That's great. Yeah, I love what you said. You know, we give context to our kids and they pick up what's best for them and what's best of both cultures and not try to force one or the other. So my Sai Indians and Seattle Mariners with equal enthusiasm. So
Oh, there you go.
yeah. All right, let's move into our weekly segments now. So why don't we spin that wheel and see what we land on? This one is called Commercial Break. So Indian TV ads are a thing, and most people have their favorite ad from TV or radio. Do you have a favorite ad?
Yeah, a couple come to mind, but I'll share one. The Cadbury Dairy Milk chocolate ad.
Yeah.
You know how that woman, when her boyfriend or fiance or whatever hits 4 runs or 6 runs, she runs to the boundary, hugs him, and they both
Yeah.
enjoy a Cadbury chocolate. Kuch khas hai. I think that's what it was called.
She's being chased by the security guards.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. More context for our listeners. India has some amazing TV ads. And every time I've had a guest and asked this question, we come up with a different one. It's such a wide range of ads that people love. Well, thank you for sharing that ad. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening to Diaspora, and we hope you enjoyed hearing Aditi's fantastic story. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the things we talked about, including the Cadbury ad. Diaspora is part of the Speaking Current network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You noticed I said Speaking Current and not Staying Power, and more information on that with subsequent episodes. The Speaking Current network of shows, including Diaspora, is available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. We'll be back with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora next week. And until then, take care and stay curious. And Aditi, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you so much for having me and letting me share my story.